Good morning. Good morning to everyone. When we were at our working at our camp session this summer, one of the Bible classes that I taught was on this text of Psalm 34, which we read today. And Psalm 34 has a lot of really powerful, amazing stuff in it. Today we're just going to look at the first 8 verses and really focus in on one verse in particular. But in our Bible class, we were sitting around in a circle in this place called the Lodge, and I don't know if there was 12 or 15 kids there, and I selected 2 of them. They all raised their hands to volunteer. These are middle school kids. All right, I picked 2 of them, and I hand each of them one M&M. Okay? And I say to the first one, I want you to tell the class about this M&M in the palm of your hand. Help us understand it. But I want you to do this as like a scientist. And so they look at it and they say, well, it feels like it weighs not very much. It's light. It's kind of a round shape, and it's this color, and it has this kind of sheen, and it feels kind of somewhat hard on the outside, and it's this and that. And they described it for 30, 45 seconds, this little M&M in their hand. And I said, okay, thank you. And to the next one, I said, I want you to take that M&M in your hand and eat it and describe it for the class. And they put it in their mouth and they chewed it a little bit and swallowed it, consumed it, and they said, it's good. That was the answer. But in that little answer, it's good, from this middle schooler, everyone in the room understood what was happening, right? There could have been a lot of different ways he could describe what's happening flavor-wise, technically, but using the word good and saying what I've eaten is good says all we need to say, all we need for us as humans to understand what that is. We all have had that experience where you can get technical and say stuff, but to say it's good means that I have experienced something that's pleasing, that's satisfying, that is good. That's the word we have for it, something that's good. And the psalmist today in Psalm 34 is trying to express what it's like to have that experience. There's a superscript before the Psalm 34 talks about David when he feigned madness before Abimelech, is the story, who drove him out as he departed. The point is that this is a trial, a difficult time, really difficult time in David's life. He's on the run from King Saul, fearing for his life, in hiding, a fugitive, and things are not going well. He's in the darkness. Everything in his life has been upended. Doesn't know what is going to happen next. He's never been down this road before. All he can do is trust in God along the way and find out each day how he's supposed to get through that day. And in that context, he says this psalm of praise, of blessing, which gives us a little insight into the heart of David. That even in the most difficult times, especially in the most difficult times, this is where David's heart leaned. It leaned in prayer and even in blessing and praise to God. in those periods of darkness, in those periods of not being able to understand. He opens Psalm 34 with this phrase, what we sang today, I will extol. My translation says, I will bless, which is already important, right? I think we mentioned this a few weeks or months ago about this idea that it is possible to bless God. Safer to translate it as extol or praise, which, by the way, is exactly what he's doing. But this word also means to bless. How is it that God can be blessed by anything or anyone? Well, we have to adjust our theology to say it is possible. God is a God who can be blessed, and blessed by us. Blessed by us in the same way that parents can be blessed by their children. Not by impressive gifts, but by things that are meaningful, expressions of love and joy, and the pictures on the refrigerator, and the hugs, and those little moments of quality time. But he says, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise will continually be on my mouth. My soul will make its boast in the Lord. The humble, like David is, small, weak at this time, the humble will hear it and rejoice. Glorify or magnify the Lord with me. Let's exalt his name together. David finds a reason to praise, and he invites whoever can hear him to praise God in this difficult time. Here's what happened to him. He sought the Lord, and the Lord answered him. He says, he delivered me from all my fears. They looked to him, and they were radiant. Their faces will never be ashamed. This afflicted man cried out, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and rescue him. And here's the key verse for this morning. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste and see that the Lord is good. How blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. What do we think about that verse? What do we believe about this? Taste and see that the Lord is good. In some ways, this is kind of a part one to last week's sermon. If you remember last week, we kind of did the text instead of just talked about the text. We engaged our bodies in worship of the Lord. And this is sort of the prequel to that, the part one of that. Taste and see that the Lord is good. I mentioned last week my particular personality, which is not uncommon to our tradition, which is a bit more reserved, a bit more academic, a bit more textually inclined rather than experiential, And so these things are hard for me, these expressions of emotion, these feelings, and this very thing that David is talking about. He's talking about knowing God in a way that we're not used to knowing. He's talking about the way that a baby or a toddler knows the world. I kind of can still remember when our kids were little, and the way that they understood and experienced the world was through taste, by putting whatever they could in the world that they encountered into their mouth, right? Maybe you remember that too. This is the way I understand the world. This is the way I get my information, by putting something in my mouth. And it's our job as parents to make sure that we protect them from things that go in their mouth, but we get them little books and pacifiers and, whatever you do to give your kids that they put in their mouth, and we give them these frozen things when their teeth start to come in. But that's how they learn about the world. That's what they do. We lose that somewhere along the line. And we've been taught, and we've been conditioned over recent centuries to believe that there is only one really important kind of knowing. Only one really important type of knowing and understanding what is real and true. Different people talk about this in different ways. Different people have different categories for explaining what human knowing is like. One of them that I saw recently is John Vervaeke, and he came up with 4 different ways of knowing, and with alliteration, each one of them started with P: propositional, procedural, perspectival, and participatory. Who cares what the words are, right? What he's saying is that there's different kinds of knowing. And the first one I mentioned has somehow become king over recent centuries in our culture. This propositional knowledge, knowing that something is, or knowing about this or that thing. There was a creature in our church building not long ago, and it had 4 legs, and it had some longer fur, and it had whiskers on its face and a longer tail. We can look at that thing, and we can know about it. I have propositional knowledge about it. This is what we categorize as a cat, and it's a mammal, and so on and so forth. Propositional knowledge. Technical knowledge. Scientific knowledge. That can be pretty useful. That's fine. That's important. But it's the least important, Vervaeke says, of the 4 kinds of knowledge. Propositional knowledge helps us to know about, helps us to know that. This is the way that we have been trained to operate as Christians, that the most important thing, the most important knowledge we can have is propositional knowledge, knowing that God is such and such, or knowing that the Bible is such and such, or knowing what this verse means. And so we learn Greek and we learn Hebrew, and if you really want to go after it, you learn Aramaic. And we dig into the text, and we come up with all these propositions about the text, and about God, and about Jesus, and all this stuff, and we have this wealth of knowledge. And if people start to question it, well, we got apologists trying to prove that our propositions are correct for us, None of that has anything to do at all with what David is telling us about here. To taste and to see that the Lord is good. I confess to my own Christianity and to the tradition that I was raised in, and to the culture that teaches us this way, that I haven't done this very often. This hasn't been emphasized. This way of knowing that's called tasting and seeing that the Lord is good. What Vervaeke would call participatory knowledge. Knowing by being. Knowing through relationship, through interaction, for possibility and action and reaction. Knowing by belonging and relationship and experience. That too is a part of human knowledge. And we're trained to think that all of reality exists in what we can know propositionally. And all of my Christian experience should exist in what my propositions are. And we can have battles between groups of Christians because we have different propositions that we believe in. And I think the Lord, as the Father, grieves that way of looking at things, looking at the world, looking at faith, looking at Christianity. And he grieves when I look at my faith and my Christianity like that too. Because there is a type of knowing that transcends and supersedes all of that. And it is the knowing that David is talking about here in verse 8. Taste and see that the Lord is good. A lot of our faith has been looking at the M&M and just describing it for one another. This is what our Bible classes are about, describing the M&M. Let's learn about how we can describe God in this and that proposition, or describe the meaning of this or that verse. That is not unimportant, but it is less important than tasting and seeing that the Lord is good. This is why Jesus died on the cross. Not so that we can have, a discussion about different theories of atonement or the Trinity or whatever. What's your view on John chapter 7 or whatever? He died so that we may taste and see that the Lord is good. I saw a video of one of the conversations that Charlie Kirk was having with someone, in the question and the context, really, it doesn't matter, it's not important. But he started giving this heartfelt, moment where he started talking about a visit that he had made to Israel, and how he walked the roads where Jesus, he described different locations and places where he went, these historical places where Jesus had also been, and how that impacted his faith, and how he knew the resurrected Lord based on his visit to those places. Well, the reality is, propositionally, half those places that people visit in Israel aren't even, they're just traditional sites that someone invented at some point and it brings in tourists. You probably didn't go to the right place. Nobody knows all of the places where Jesus was, or where certain locations were, or where the tomb was, or where he was crucified, or whatever. Probably didn't go there. Probably weren't scientifically accurate in your visit. But the knowledge that he's talking about is a different kind of knowledge. There is an encounter he had with Jesus there. An encounter that transcends all of these other ways of knowing. A relational, living, actual, active, real encounter with the living Lord. And that is as real as you can get. Can't describe it, not very well, propositionally, scientifically. And if we limit our world and our reality and what we can call true or not to that realm, then we're not going to have a lot of things to say about these other kinds of knowing. But that's a restriction that we've placed on ourselves. We taught ourselves how to limit the world of what is real and what is true and what we can know and how. That's not the way we've always been as humans. Not even during the Enlightenment and after. Taste and see that the Lord is good. This is what God calls us to do. This is the message, the simple message today. Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to really open up my heart, my life, my feelings, my emotions, my vulnerability, and say, Lord, help me to seek you, to taste and see that you are good. Not to just know about you, but to know you and to be known by you. And we can do this in any context, any moment in our life. It can be in great moments of celebration, joy. It can be in moments like David is experiencing here, where it's severe trial. We've had our share of mourning and grief in our congregation over recent years. And now we are grieving with Sherry and her family the loss of John. And it hurts. Is there room to find the goodness of God even there? I look around the room and I see how many people know the grief that she knows today, that Marianne knows today. Can we find God's goodness in that grief, in that darkness, in that pain, in that world of the unknown? And David says, yes. Yes, and I have. Yes, and I continue to do so. And it's not easy. But grieving is not a doctrine. Tasting and seeing that the Lord is good is not a doctrine. It's a promise. Look at what he says in verse 8. Taste and see that the Lord is good. How blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. This is a promise of a blessing. We begin by blessing God and praising God in this psalm. And we come to this point of a promise where God says, I will bless you. You find me, you seek me in your darkest hour, in the most difficult place, in your place of pain, of confusion, of anger, of sadness, of grief. You take refuge in me there, and you will know my blessing, my goodness. You will taste and see that I am good. May we have the courage, the boldness, the faith to seek God wherever we are, whatever's happening in our life now. May we boldly approach God and say, Lord, I seek you. Lord, I seek you. I long to taste and to see, to experience, to know your goodness. And we too will find, like David, that blessing when we take refuge in him. Let's stand and sing.